The first time I saw Mason read, he was sitting under a sycamore tree, tossing a tennis ball against the bricks of an old maintenance shed like the world wasn't falling apart around him. It was orientation week at Oak Hollow University, sun-baked, chaotic, and buzzing with 1,000 anxious freshmen who were all pretending they weren't terrified. I wasn't looking for anyone that day. But fate, she doesn't need your permission. He wore a worn gray hoodie, even though it was too warm for it, and his jeans had a tear at the knee that didn't look like fashion. The ball hit the brick. Bounce. Catch. Over and over. There was something about the way he moved, slow but certain, like a guy who'd already seen too much and didn't have anything left to prove. I was carrying a box of books that weighed more than all my poor life choices combined. Tripped on a curb. The whole thing exploded into a papery avalanche. And just like that, Mason was there, scooping up the bell jar and sociological theory like he'd read them both cover to cover. "You're either brilliant or dangerously optimistic," he said, holding out the books. "Maybe both," I replied, smirking through the flush in my cheeks. We clicked like wet puzzle pieces, awkward, perfect, a little messy. And that first conversation turned into coffee, then dinner, then sitting under that same sycamore tree for hours, mapping out constellations with our fingers and pretending we knew their names. I swear I've never laughed like I did that first week. He had this magnetism, the kind that doesn't ask for attention, it just walks in and fills the room. Mason wasn't like the other guys at Oak Hollow. He didn't flex his GPA or talk about his high school glory days. He asked questions, deep, personal, sometimes uncomfortable. But he listened. Not the nod-along kind of listening. He soaked up every word like it mattered. He told me about his little sister, Lila, who painted murals on the walls of their garage and dreamed of becoming an astronaut. He talked about his mom, who raised them alone in a trailer that leaked when it rained but never once made them feel poor. His dad. Gone. Ghosted before I learned to tie my shoes, he said. I remember the way he said it, no bitterness, just a tired kind of acceptance. I told him about my dad's accident, about how my mom wore her grief like armor and how I wasn't sure I knew how to be happy anymore. And when I finally said that out loud, Mason didn't try to fix me. He just pulled me into him, gently, like I was a fragile thing that deserved to be held. That night, he said something I'd never forget. I don't make promises I can't keep. But if I tell you I'm in this, I'm in it. All the way. And he meant it. At least, I thought he did. We became that couple, the one people whispered about in libraries and cafeteria lines. We weren't showy, but we were close. Seamless. He'd lace his fingers with mine during lectures, write me poems on napkins, leave my favorite tea on my desk before early classes. 3 months in, he said it. I love you. Just like that. No grand gesture. No perfect timing. We were brushing our teeth in the tiny dorm bathroom, spitting into the same sink. And he looked up, foam on his lips, and said it like he couldn't hold it in a second longer. I love you, Tessa. God help me. I laughed, because I didn't know what else to do. Then I said it back. And we were off. Our own little universe. But here's the thing about fairy tales. Nobody tells you that even the prettiest ones have trapdoors. The first time something felt off, it was barely a flicker. A party in October, all red cups and sweaty music. He was distant. Distracted. Kept checking his phone. When I asked what was wrong, he smiled, crooked and thin. Nothing. Just tired. I let it go. I wish I hadn't. We made it through fall semester in one piece, or so I thought. I was busy, buried in papers and study groups, while Mason drifted in and out of my orbit like a satellite losing signal. He'd still show up for our Wednesday Thai takeout nights, still kiss me on the forehead before class, still hold my hand like it was the only real thing in the world. But there were moments, sharp, cold little moments, where I'd look at him and feel like I was watching someone I didn't know anymore. He stopped talking about Lila. Stopped talking about anything real, really. When I asked if he was okay, he'd just say, "Yeah, just tired," like it was a script he'd memorized. He'd been just tired for weeks. Maybe months. I caught him staring out windows, checking his phone with that twitch in his jaw that only came when he was angry or stressed. And once, I came back from class to find him sitting on the floor of my dorm room, legs stretched out, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting for it to collapse. "You ever feel like you're being pulled underwater?" he asked. I knelt down next to him. "Sometimes. But I've always had you to pull me back up." He didn't answer. He just leaned his head against mine and closed his eyes. That night, he held me like a lifeline. Like I was the only thing anchoring him to this world. But even then, there was a part of me, small and quiet, that whispered, "He's already slipping." By December, he stopped calling me in the mornings. Stopped sending those texts that always made my day, "Hey sleepyhead, hope you dreamt of galaxies," or "Don't forget to eat, love you to the moon and back." Instead, I'd get silence. Or worse, dry, clipped replies that felt like crumbs tossed at someone he no longer had time for. And then there were the lies. Small ones, at first. One Saturday, he said he was helping a classmate study for finals. But I saw on his roommate's story that he was at some lake an hour away, skipping rocks and drinking from a brown paper bag. He didn't even try to hide it. When I asked him about it, he looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "God, Tess. It was just a spontaneous trip. Do I have to clear every hour of my life with you?" That wasn't Mason. That wasn't my Mason. We didn't fight much before. But now. Now everything was a spark. And not the good kind. One night, I made him soup when he came over looking pale and worn out. He barely touched it. Said it smelled weird. I snapped, "I admit it. Do you even want to be here, Mason? Or are you just checking a box?" He stared at me for a long time. Then said, "I don't know what I want." It was like being punched in the chest. The next day, he left me a note in my sketchbook, the one I always left open on my desk. It was torn from a journal, his handwriting rushed and uneven. "Tessa. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening to me. Please don't stop loving me, even if I forget how to love myself." I kept that note like it was gospel. Like if I just held on to it, everything would go back to the way it was. I convinced myself that love meant holding on, even when it felt like I was the only one doing the holding. By spring, we were a ghost of what we used to be. Still together. Still pretending. But the magic, the electricity that once made strangers smile when they saw us, was flickering out like a dying candle. And yet, when he asked me to move in with him that summer, I said yes. Because I thought maybe that was all he needed, a fresh start. A new chapter. A reason to stay. He kissed my forehead, pulled me into his chest, and whispered, "Forever, Tess. I promise." I closed my eyes. And chose to believe him. We moved into a tiny third-floor walk-up just off Linwood Street that summer. It wasn't much, peeling paint, uneven floorboards, and a fridge that growled at night like it was haunted, but it was ours. Our first place. Our beginning. I remember standing in the middle of the living room, still sweaty from hauling boxes, and watching Mason tape a crooked Polaroid of us to the fridge. He grinned and said, "It's official. We're domestic." I should have been ecstatic. And for a while, I was. We hung string lights and danced barefoot to old records. We painted one wall a shade of blue so bright it looked like a mistake, and we laughed about it every time we walked past. We had Sunday pancakes, shared grocery lists, took turns killing spiders and unclogging the shower drain. We were building a life, brick by uncertain brick. But if love is a house, then ours had termites. And they were already deep in the walls. Mason started coming home later. Said work was picking up. He'd taken a job as a research assistant in the psych department, something he was excited about at first. But after a few weeks, that excitement drained out of him like water through a sieve. He stopped telling me about his day. He'd come in, drop his keys in the bowl by the door, and collapse on the couch without a word. I tried. God, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals. I left little notes in his lunch bag like I used to. I bought a tiny cactus for the windowsill and named it Franklin, just to make him laugh. He smiled once. Then went right back to his phone. And one day, the messages stopped being "I'm on my way" and started being "Don't wait up." I wasn't stupid. I noticed the way he'd linger in the shower, how his cologne smelled different, how he'd turn his phone over when it buzzed. But I told myself not to jump to conclusions. He was just stressed. Overwhelmed. Men pull away when they're struggling, right? That's what every self-help article said, anyway. I remember the night I found the box. It was tucked in the back of his closet, behind a stack of flannels he hadn't worn in months. I wasn't snooping. Not really. I was looking for my missing headphones. But when I pulled the box out, just a plain cardboard shoebox, I felt it. That cold, creeping sense that the truth was about to gut me. Inside were things I'd never seen before. A postcard from Marfa, Texas. A silver bracelet I'd never worn. A movie stub from a film I hadn't watched. And a letter. Folded once. My name on the front. But the writing wasn't Mason's. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I shoved everything back, closed the closet, and sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, listening to the slow tick of the wall clock and the sound of my own heartbeat clawing at my chest. When he came home, I looked at him. Really looked. And something was different. He kissed me on the cheek like always. Asked if we had any clean towels. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to ask, "Who is she?" But I didn't. I just nodded. And he went to take a shower, humming under his breath like the world hadn't shifted 2 inches to the left. That night, I stared at the ceiling, wide awake beside the man I thought I knew. I knew what heartbreak felt like. But that was the night I first tasted betrayal. And it was bitter. I couldn't sleep for days after I found that box. It sat in the back of Mason's closet like a ticking bomb. Every time I opened the door to grab a sweater or put away laundry, I felt it watching me. Daring me. Whispering, "You know this isn't what it seems. You know you don't want to know." But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. On a rainy Wednesday, gray, smudged with thunder, I caved. I waited until Mason left for work, locked the apartment door behind him, and pulled the box out again. My hands were trembling. It felt like I was about to open a casket. I took out the letter. The one with my name on it but not in his handwriting. I unfolded it slowly, the paper creased and soft like it had been opened many times before. And I read. "Tessa. He talks about you like you're the stars and he's the telescope. He says your laugh is the sound he'd play on repeat for the rest of his life. That when he met you, he started hoping again. And I believe him. But I need to tell you something. Mason's been lying to you. Not because he doesn't love you, but because he doesn't know how to be honest when he's scared. He's been in touch with someone from his past, someone who hurt him in ways he's never told you. He's spiraling, Tess. He thinks he has to carry it alone, because that's what he's always done. He won't tell you the truth. But I hope this helps you understand that if he pulls away, it's not because of you. It's because he still hasn't forgiven himself for something he won't even say out loud. You deserve the whole story. I hope he gives it to you. C. There was no return address. No full name. Just C. My breath caught halfway through my chest. I sat there on the hardwood floor, that letter clutched in my shaking hands, the storm outside rattling against the windows like some kind of divine exclamation point. Who the hell was he? Was she the past? Was she the secret? Was she, the person he'd been texting when he said he was tired? The box didn't answer me. It just sat there, silent and smug, holding all the pieces of a story I didn't know I was living. I wanted to confront him right away. But I didn't. I needed more. I needed the truth, not just a denial wrapped in charm and half-smiles. So instead, I started watching. Tracking. Not in a creepy way. But every time he said he was going somewhere, I noted the time. I noticed what he wore. What cologne he used. Who he texted before he left and how his mood shifted when he returned. It didn't take long. A Saturday. Sunny, warm, the kind of day that feels like it's meant for healing. He said he was going to the library to catch up on some research. I kissed him goodbye, pretending I was still the girl who believed in his forever. Then I followed him. He didn't go to the library. He didn't even head toward campus. He drove 20 minutes south, to a quiet part of town I'd never seen before. Pulled into a narrow driveway behind a weathered blue house. Sat in the car for a minute, then got out. And she was there. She came out of the house barefoot, coffee cup in hand, and smiled like she'd been waiting for him all day. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. But the way he looked at her. It was the way he used to look at me. I didn't stay to watch them talk. I drove home, numb, the road blurring into streaks of grief and headlights. I didn't cry. Not yet. My body was holding it all in like a dam on the verge of collapse. When Mason came back that evening, he smelled like her. And for the first time in our story, I lied too. Good day? I asked, folding a dish towel with robotic calm. He nodded. Yeah. Got a lot done. I smiled. I'm glad. But inside? Inside, the part of me that believed in forever was already packing its bags. I started sleeping with my back to him. Not intentionally at first. But something in me recoiled when he touched me. When he curled into me like he used to, I stayed still. My body stiff, my breath shallow. I think he noticed, because one night he stopped reaching for me altogether. And still, I said nothing. What do you say when love starts to rot from the inside out? When the man who promised you forever is sneaking away to see someone else, and you don't even know who she is? I told myself I needed time. A plan. Proof. Maybe some part of me was still hoping he'd tell me first, before I had to expose it. But he didn't. And so, the silence became our third roommate. It followed us from room to room, thick, suffocating, always there. Our conversations turned shallow, transactional. Did you pick up the eggs? Yeah. We're out of coffee though. Okay. He stopped calling me Tess. Just, hey, or babe, or nothing at all. And I hated how I still jumped at the sound of his keys in the door. Like maybe this would be the day he came back to me, really back. Like in the movies, when the guy realizes what he's got and begs her not to give up. That never happened. Instead, one night, I came home from work to find his duffel bag by the door. I stood in the kitchen, grocery bag still in my arms, staring at it like it was a snake ready to strike. Mason was in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head down. I didn't move. Finally, he looked up. I'm leaving, he said. Just like that. No explanation. No emotion. Leaving, for the night? I asked, even though I knew. He shook his head. For good. The bags dropped from my arms. Apples rolled across the hardwood like marbles in slow motion. One hit the wall and split open. I didn't care. Is there someone else? My voice cracked halfway through. He didn't answer. Didn't have to. I wanted to scream. To sob. To ask how he could promise me the stars and then disappear into someone else's orbit. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking. Why? I finally asked. He stood up slowly, walked toward me, but stopped a few feet away. You didn't do anything wrong, Tess, he said softly. This is me. It's always been me. I almost laughed. That's the kind of thing people say when they don't have the guts to tell the truth. Who is she? I asked. He looked away. It doesn't matter. Oh, it matters. She's just someone who sees me. I let those words hang in the air. Like I hadn't seen every scar, every secret, every flaw in him. Like I hadn't built a home from the broken pieces of his past. Like I hadn't loved him at his most unlovable. He bent down, picked up his duffel, and slung it over his shoulder. I'm sorry, he said, avoiding my eyes. I stepped aside. I didn't trust myself not to grab him, not to scream, not to beg. He walked to the door. Hand on the knob. Then he turned back, eyes glassy. I did love you, Tess. I swear I did. And with that, he left. No bags packed earlier. No conversation. No warning. Just gone. The moment the door shut, I slid to the floor. Sat among crushed apples and broken eggs and all the pieces of a life we were supposed to build together. I don't remember how long I sat there. But I remember the sound of the rain beginning to fall, soft at first, then pounding. And I remember thinking. He promised forever. And he left without even saying goodbye. Grief is strange. It doesn't follow the stages they talk about in textbooks. It's not neat or logical. It doesn't wait its turn or move at a reasonable pace. Some mornings, I woke up and forgot he was gone. I'd roll over expecting to see his messy hair, that stupid tattoo on his shoulder, his phone charging at an angle. But all I got was cold sheets and the gut punch of remembering. Other days, I hated him so fiercely I could feel it burning in my chest. I'd walk through the apartment like a ghost, picking up his forgotten hoodie or the last toothbrush he left behind and have to fight the urge to toss it all into the dumpster behind our building. But I didn't. Instead, I boxed it all up. Every piece of him. Folded neatly, labeled Mason, and shoved into the top of my closet like it wasn't haunting me. People started to notice. My best friend, Kayla, came over with donuts and one of those healing crystals she doesn't actually believe in. She sat beside me on the couch, silent for a long time, then just said, "He's a coward." I nodded. "I'm glad he's gone." I nodded again. But I wasn't. Not yet. My mom left voicemails. Sweet, soft ones. Just checking in. I didn't call her back for a while. I didn't want to hear that time heals all wounds or you'll find someone better. Because I didn't want someone better. I wanted the version of Mason I fell in love with. The one who watched the stars with me. Who laughed when I burned the pancakes and built me a bookcase from scratch because I said I wanted to feel more like a grown-up. But that Mason? He was gone long before he walked out the door. I saw him once. A few weeks after he left. I was grabbing coffee from the place on 7th, the one with the crooked table we always used to sit at on Sunday mornings, and he walked in. Alone. Wearing that same hoodie from the first day we met. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and chose not to. He ordered black coffee. No cream, no sugar. Just like always. Then he stood at the pickup counter, staring down at his phone. Smiling at something. I wanted to throw my latte at the wall. Instead, I quietly walked out the side door and sat in my car, shaking. I didn't cry. Not right away. But later, when I got home, I turned off all the lights, curled up on the living room rug, and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Not just because he was gone, but because I realized, I didn't want him back. I wanted an apology. I wanted him to admit that he broke me. But most of all, I wanted to stop needing any of that. So I started small. I unfollowed him on every platform. Instagram, gone. Twitter, blocked. Even Spotify, because seeing his playlists felt like tiny daggers. I threw out the Polaroid on the fridge. I replaced it with a photo of me and Kayla from college, drunk, messy, laughing so hard one of us had mascara in her teeth. It was me. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed a little easier. It wasn't healing. Not yet. But it was something. About 2 months after Mason left, I found one of his sneakers under the couch. Just one. Scuffed at the toe, laces frayed, the same pair he used to wear when we went hiking in the fall. I picked it up like it was radioactive, like it might whisper his name or some cruel punchline from the universe. And then, I laughed. Laughed until my eyes stung. Because somehow, the idea that he had walked out of my life and left a shoe behind felt poetic. Like he couldn't even ghost me properly. He had to leave something. A trail of crumbs, or maybe just proof that he had, in fact, been real. I didn't cry that day. Instead, I tossed the shoe in a box marked, "Donate," and drove it out of town to a shelter that always needed extras. I didn't even leave my name. Somewhere, some stranger might be wearing Mason's size 11 left sneaker. Good. Let the world wear him down the way he wore me. Grief became something else by then, less like drowning, more like carrying a heavy backpack you forget is there until someone bumps into it. It's with you always, just in different ways. I started writing again. Not poetry, Mason had ruined that for me, but journal entries, scribbled lists, scraps of dialogue I overheard on the bus and didn't want to forget. I wrote about the day he left, about the box in the closet, about the smile he gave that girl in the coffee shop. And I wrote about the girl he left behind. I wrote about her waking up alone. Cooking too much food. Holding her breath every time the door buzzed, thinking maybe, it was him. I wrote about her healing. Not with big, sweeping changes. But with little ones. New towels. A haircut. A plant she remembered to water. There were setbacks, of course. Like the time I found a song he added to our shared playlist. A soft, sad acoustic thing about second chances and timing. I listened to it. All 4 minutes and 22 seconds. And then I deleted the playlist. Or the night I ran into his friend Marcus at a bar downtown. He looked at me like I was a ghost. "Hey," he said, voice low. I didn't know if I should say something. I sipped my drink. "Then don't." But he didn't listen. "He's not okay, you know. He misses you." I smiled without meaning it. "That doesn't change what he did." Marcus nodded. "He knows that." We stood there in the neon hush of the jukebox light, the past hovering between us like a dust storm. "Did he ever tell you why?" I asked. Marcus hesitated. Then, he said he felt like he was breaking. Like he wasn't good enough to stay. And he didn't want to watch you fix him. I turned away. Because that was the most selfish kind of love. The kind that walks away, just to avoid being vulnerable. The kind that promises forever, and leaves because it's easier. There's a strange peace that comes after the hurt fades. Not happiness, not yet, but something quieter. Something steadier. Like finally standing on solid ground after months of drifting in the current, unsure which way was up. I stopped waiting for Mason's name to show up in my inbox. I stopped checking the sidewalk every time I walked past the old cafe, wondering if I'd see him at that crooked table again. And slowly, the apartment began to look less like ours and more like mine. I painted over the blue wall. Remember the one that was so bright it looked like a mistake? I picked a warm, muted cream that made the light bounce soft and slow across the room. I took down the string lights we'd hung our first week here and replaced them with a vintage lamp from a thrift store. One with a little chain you pull that makes the whole room feel like a library. It felt like a small, quiet rebellion. I started going to the park again. The one near the college where Mason and I used to walk at sunset. I avoided it for a long time. But one day, I just went. There was an older couple sitting on a bench feeding birds. A girl reading a book under the same sycamore tree where I first saw him tossing that tennis ball. I sat across the path and just watched, waiting to feel something. Anger. Sorrow. Nostalgia. But all I felt was a deep, aching calm. Like I'd finally made peace with the ghost of him. I didn't expect what happened next. I was back at the apartment one night, baking something absurd like cinnamon bread at 11:30 p.m. because that's what healing people apparently do, when there was a knock at the door. Not the buzzer. A knock. Close. Personal. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened it, heart in my throat. Mason. Standing there like a memory pulled into reality. Same hoodie. Slight stubble. A folded piece of paper in his hand. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He handed me the note. I don't expect you to read it now. Or ever. But I needed to try. I took it. He turned to leave. Mason, I said, barely above a whisper. He stopped. His shoulders rose, then dropped. I'm not angry anymore, I told him. But I'm not the same girl you left. He turned, met my eyes. I know. You don't have to forgive me. I just needed you to know I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to stay. I didn't reply. What could I say to that? He left without asking to come in. I stood there for a long time, the note in my hand, my heart beating a little steadier than I expected. I didn't open the letter that night. Instead, I made tea. Turned off the oven. And sat on the couch, alone, but not lonely, for the first time in what felt like forever. It took me 3 days to open Mason's letter. I left it on the nightstand, unopened, the edges softening from where I kept running my thumb across the crease. It was a strange kind of power, to have his truth in my hands and choose when or whether to read it. For once, I wasn't the one left waiting. On the third night, after a thunderstorm rolled through and left the world smelling like wet leaves and asphalt, I finally lit a candle, sat on my bed, and opened the envelope. His handwriting was still the same. Slight tilt, heavy pen strokes, like he was always afraid the words might disappear if he didn't press hard enough. Tess. I've rewritten this 100 times. Started it with, I'm sorry, with, please read this, with, I know I don't deserve you. But all of those are just noise. You deserve better than noise. I lied to you. Not in the way you probably think. I didn't leave you for her. See, her name is Camille. She's not someone I was in love with. She's someone from a time in my life I tried to bury. We were both in a group therapy program when I was 17. My mom had just tried to end her own life, and I wasn't coping. I shut down. I got angry. And Camille, she was just a friend who got it. She found me again last year. Said she was in town. Said she wanted to talk. I didn't tell you because I was afraid. Not of you. But of what it meant to let that part of me back in. I never talked to you about those years. I never told you how dark it really got. How many nights I sat in silence wondering if I was just destined to lose everyone who ever tried to love me. Being with you, Tess, was like being handed a lantern after years in a cave. You made me want to be better. Not for you, for myself. But somewhere along the way, I started to feel like I didn't deserve that light. I got scared. Scared that one day you'd see what was really underneath the surface and walk away. So I beat you to it. I know how cowardly that is. How selfish. And I'll live with that every day. I wasn't cheating. I was unraveling. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect this letter to make anything okay. But I hope it gives you something I never had the decency to give you before, closure. I loved you more than I've ever loved anyone. I probably always will. Mason. I read it twice. And then once more. It didn't undo the damage. It didn't explain the months of coldness, the sneaking around, the leaving without a goodbye. But it offered something I hadn't even realized I still needed. An answer. I sat on the bed and cried, not because I wanted him back. Not even because I missed him. But because he had finally told the truth. Grief is heavy, yes. But guilt? Guilt is a damn anchor. That night, I wrote him back. Not a long letter. Just a few lines on a torn piece of notebook paper. Mason. Thank you for telling me the truth. I wish you had done it sooner. I wish a lot of things. But I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you find peace. Goodbye. Tessa. I never mailed it. Just folded it in half and tucked it inside the box at the top of my closet. The one with the hoodie, the old Polaroid, and now, his truth. And then I made space. I bought new bed sheets. I signed up for a ceramics class downtown. And I invited Kayla over for wine and takeout and terrible Netflix movies that made us laugh until our ribs ached. My life didn't bloom overnight. But I could feel the roots shifting. A year passed. Not all at once, of course. It came in pieces, sunrises I didn't notice, evenings that didn't hurt, Tuesdays where I forgot to think about him. I marked the 1-year anniversary of the day he left by doing something small and kind for myself. I went to the ocean. Not to scream into it. Not to throw his letters into the tide like some poetic movie scene. Just to be still. To sit in the sand with a journal in my lap, a breeze in my hair, and write not about him, but about me. About who I was now. Stronger. Wiser. More grounded in who I am and what I need. There was no big moment of revelation. No fairy godmother healing the pain. But there was peace. Not all the time, not in every breath, but enough. Enough to know I'd made it to the other side. I'd see Mason's name sometimes, tagged in someone's photo, mentioned by a mutual friend. But it didn't make my chest cave in anymore. He'd become a chapter. Not the whole book. I saw him once more. Early spring, at a bookstore downtown. I was flipping through a travel journal. He was in the non-fiction aisle. We made eye contact. No music swelled. No montage played. He gave me a small, respectful nod. A flicker of something passed behind his eyes, nostalgia, maybe. Or just recognition. I nodded back. And that was it. He didn't come over. I didn't wave. We weren't each other's people anymore. I walked out with my journal and a new candle and the quiet joy of knowing I didn't need closure anymore, because I had already given it to myself. Later that month, I got a job offer in another city. A chance to start fresh, really fresh. I took it. Packed up the apartment, donated what I didn't need, and drove out of Oak Hollow with my favorite playlist on and the windows down. I didn't look back. Somewhere on the highway, with the sun dipping behind the hills and the scent of wildflowers sneaking through the breeze, I smiled. Not because I had someone new. Not because I had it all figured out. But because I knew, finally, that the worst thing that had happened to me wasn't going to define me. Mason promised forever. And then he left without warning. But I stayed. I stayed with myself. Through the storm, through the silence, through the rebuilding. And now, I was finally learning how to begin again. On my own terms. With my own light.